All right, in this video we're going to walk through the process on modeling this Hershey bar so that you can have a second part for your s'more. To go ahead and start this, you can look at these drawings or you can work from the dimensions that you've generated from measuring Hershey bar. I'm going to use these dimensions here to move forward. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to create what would be the side profile of this chocolate bar. That way I can end up getting a side angle as well on both sides and then extrude it, and then I'll come back and then I will cut off the two side angles from the square. That's going to be the approach I'm going to take. Then I'll use another tool to create the indentation, the emboss, and then of course this rounded fillet. So what we're going to do now is just start this side profile. So I'm going to then draw 25.86 across here, and then I'm going to go ahead and get the angle information, the top being 16, and that's centered, and then get my angle pieces down. So I'm going to go into Inventor, and the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and start a brand new part file. And the part file I'm going to open up is going to be a file new, and we make sure it's a metric file, and then hit standard millimeters and hit create. While Inventor goes ahead and sets this up, now I'm going to grab my 2D sketch. I'm going to create a 2D sketch on a work plane, and now I'm going to go ahead and draw in that side profile. So that side profile is going to be, bottom line is going to be 25.86, and then the height is going to be 9. So they're the two pieces I need to know. So I'm going to go ahead and draw over 25.86, and that's in millimeters. And then I need to come up, what's going to then be, well actually I'm going to come up from center, because I need to know center as well. Wait till I mouse over top and I lock on. I'm going to draw up 9 millimeters. Whoops, 9 millimeters. So this is going to be the rough geometry I'm going to start with. And then I can start coming back out this way. Now, the line going across the top is 16. As I look back and take a look at this, it's 16 to the outside. So if I come across 8 and 8 from where I am here in the center, that'll be just fine. So I'll go 8 in this direction, and then I'll start a new line, come back this direction, 8. And I can go ahead and just basically connect these edges here, and I know that that is my angle. And I don't really need the rest of this geometry here in the center. So I could go ahead and actually delete that center line, and now I'm ready to go ahead and extrude. So I could go ahead and finish my sketch, grab my extrude tool, and now I can look as if I'm starting to sort of rough out this chocolate bar shape. And my extrusion is going to be 44.92, and that's coming from my sketch. So I go back into Inventor here, and I'm going to pull this out, 44.92. And now I've got a roughed out view of my chocolate bar that now just needs to be sort of trimmed off here. I got to trim off these edges to get the same taper on all sides. All right, next thing we need to do is we need to be able to create chamfer, or we need to create geometry to cut out a portion of this extruded chocolate bar. So we're going to go ahead, if I go back to Inventor, go ahead and we'll explore the Chamfer tool. And the information that I was been given here is the idea of a height of 9 and then an angle of 54.2. Now the Chamfer tool is actually going to give an angle from a particular edge, and that's generally in relationship to the edge that's being chamfered. So really what we need to do is come up with 54.2 subtracted from 90 to end up getting this angle here, which is going to be 35.8. So what we do is we're going to come into Inventor, and I'm going to go ahead and tell it that the face it's going to get chamfered is here, and the distance is going to be 9, and then the angle is going to be 35.8. And now it wants to know an edge that's going to be working around. So if I select that particular face, that's the angle that's going to be cut off at 35.8. So I can go ahead and apply that. Now I could easily go ahead and apply that to the other side to chamfer that in, but you could also go ahead and we could put a work plane down the center of the part, as we've done before, and then create the sketch on that centered work plane and then cut off that part in both directions. So several ways that you can go ahead and do this, but just for the ease of creating this, I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to grab the face, I'm going to grab the edge. You can see that this is what's happening. It's going to cut that section off, and then we'll hit apply. So now what we've done is we've really roughed out a simplified representation of our chocolate bar, and we're now ready to start putting in the indentation for the center and then the letters to emboss for Hershey's. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the indentation on the top, and we'll go back and take a look at the drawing. If you look at the section view, section AA of the chocolate bar here, you can see that there is a slight indentation on the top of this chocolate bar that has a distance of 1.0 millimeters. And you can see that there is a rounded edge at this point. That rounded edge is a fillet of 1 millimeter. So the inside indentation is actually going to be 1 millimeter on all sides in, sort of offset from the top of the face. So what we'll do is go back into Inventor, and we're going to go ahead and place a sketch on the top face here. We'll do a Start 2D sketch, place it on this top face. And now what we'll do is grab the Offset tool. And once you select the Offset tool from the Modify bar, there's nothing really here to offset yet. So we need to get some geometry from this solid projected onto my sketch face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this Project Geometry button, and I'm going to mouse over this top face, and you can see that white line highlight. Once I do that, I'm going to select it, and then once that highlights, I now have geometry I can work with. It turns yellow when I move away from it. I'll go ahead now and grab my Offset tool, and I can now select that particular line of geometry, and I can keep selecting that line of geometry, hit continue, and I can start pulling in and then give it 1 millimeter. I can then select, right click, hit continue, pull in, give it 1 millimeter. And the only problem is I'm going to have to come back and trim all this up. So instead of doing it with a single selection on, what I'm going to do is grab that Offset tool, select the line, right click, and I want to turn on what's called Loop Select. And what Loop Select is going to do for me is I'm going to grab the Offset tool. When I mouse over one line that's actually set up in a loop, if I select it and pull in, you can see that it pulls in all of those lines at the same time. So you can either right click and turn on or off Loop Select in order to make that work. So again, grab the Offset tool, pull in, and I'm going to go ahead and type in 1, and it now creates an inside closed loop for me that is offset 1 millimeter from all sides. So it's a very useful tool for using offsets in Inventor. Once I do this, I can finish the sketch, I can grab my Extrude tool, and then I can select the inside portion of that loop, and I can tell this that I want to cut. So I'm going to change direction, and instead of my old extrusion there, I'm going to give it a distance of 1, and now I have an indentation that is completely centered on the face of my chocolate bar. All right, next step is going to be setting up a fillet. We're going to go ahead and use the radius of 1 for this inside fillet arc. So we'll go back to Inventor. I'm going to grab my fillet tool, and I'll set up my fillet radius here to be 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and just start selecting around that first top edge here so that it then goes in, creates that top fillet on the part, sort of rounding that down into that surface. Once that's been selected, I go ahead and hit apply and then cancel. Once the fillets are complete, we're now ready to start looking to set up our text for Hershey's and go ahead and emboss the... All right, so the Hershey's text that's on the top of this is actually embossed into the top of the chocolate bar. So we're going to go ahead and set this up by taking a 2D sketch and placing it on this top surface of the chocolate bar. We're going to go ahead and create that by putting a 2D sketch on the surface. And then we're simply going to grab our text tool and move over on top of the chocolate and click once. Now we have our text box set up, and we can just go ahead and type in Hershey's. So we'll make it all caps. Apostrophe S, H-E-R, wait a minute, I have 2 R's. H-E-R-S-H-E-Y, apostrophe S, Hershey's. All right, so that's set up. I'm not really so sure about the height right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and run with that 3.5 millimeter and see just how large that turns out to be. And it turns out to be incorrectly located, and looks like it needs to be rotated. So if you need to rotate your text, what I'm going to do is first hit escape to clear out of my command. I'm going to select the text once. I'm going to grab the rotation tool off the modified toolbar, and then I need to give it a selected center point. So I'm actually going to just select right here, and now I'm going to actually rotate this up and then select again. I can see my angle here is actually going to be then 90 degrees, so I know I'm locked on 90. There it is, and then I can then click. Go ahead and hit done because I'm finished rotating. Now I can just go ahead and drag the text over by holding down my left mouse. And I'm just going to go ahead and center that, sort of eyeball that on all sides to make sure it's lined up and looking centered. So I can go ahead and finish that sketch, and now I'm ready to start embossing the Hershey text down into the... Alright, so to go ahead and emboss Hershey's into the top of the chocolate bar, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find the emboss tool. And the emboss tool, it's floating around up here somewhere. There it is. It's on the create bar. It says emboss. Go ahead and select that. First thing it's going to want to know is the actual thing it's going to emboss, so the profile. Okay, so I'm going to select the profile of the text and then turn the entire thing some so I can see there's a little arrow that shows up. And here's the little arrow. That's telling me that it wants to emboss up. I don't want it to emboss up. I want it to emboss down. So I'm going to change the direction so it's embossing down. And instead, I need to change the actual type of emboss where I want this to engrave from the face in. So by doing this, I'm actually going to then change also the depth of the emboss to be like 0.01. And then I can then go ahead and hit OK. So it's a very, very shallow emboss. And as I look at this, it looks like it's probably too shallow. So I'm actually going to do that. Change, I'm going to edit the feature, go into edit feature, and just like all parts and pieces of Inventor here, you can always go back in and edit a particular feature. So as I look at that, yeah, it's a little bit more of a defined emboss. May even do a little bit more. So go back and edit this feature and say, let's do 0.1. There we go. All right, so now we have that emboss set up. I'm just going to go ahead and save this part, and then I'll be ready to utilize this in my layout as well as my assembly. So I now have a simplified representation of my Hershey bar.